Greetings, YouTube. I'm not sure if I've ever covered this topic before, so if I have, I apologize. Just go with it. I don't even remember all the videos I've made. Someone posted a comment on a thread I read the other day dealing with racial strife in a campaign. Though in a fantasy or science fiction campaign, maybe it should be more species strife, speciesism, because elves and humans aren't the same race. Um, Now, if your campaign allows them to interbreed, maybe they're similar offshoots, they're genetic cousins, but they're still separate. And if your campaign doesn't let them interbreed, they are sexual, completely separate species. Um, and speciesism, whatever, does have a place in a campaign. It gives it a sense of reality of, if you'll pardon a $20 word, verisimilitude. The idea that there has to be that depth of that texture and that structure that breathes life into a setting. Because for any kind of situation where you have multi-ethnicities or multi-species living elbow to elbow, there's going to be conflict, and some of that is going to be expressed as prejudice and bigotry. And in most campaigns, um, different species are an analogy, or an analog rather, I should say analog, yeah, analog of our own cultural or ethnic strife we have here. Um, in fact, in a lot of campaigns, human is one generic class, and elf is one generic class, even though they should, by all rights, have their own ethnic elements. Just like there should be Klingons that are not warriors, and there should be Vulcans that aren't necessarily always perfectly logical. That should be a cultural trait, maybe a dominant one, but it shouldn't be the only one. So yeah, the absolute across the board homogeny of the races in science fiction and fantasy is annoying. I understand why it exists. It's a lot of work for an author in a novel, or for someone writing a game world, or for a GM to play out 23 separate ethnicities for every single species. That's a lot of work, folks, and I get it. So we simplify simple things down until they're more like Legos. You know, plug and stick them where you want to go, and that's good enough. Gnomes are tinkerers, dwarves are kind of greedy craftsmen, and elves are tree hugging environmentalists. I get that. Um, Humans are the only ones that seem to be able to do anything they want to. They're supposed to be the jack of all trades. So it makes sense that there is a speciesism strife in the world. I get that. And as a GM, I play that out. But I have to admit, I have a problem when players play that out. If I know everyone in a group, and I know their history and their personalities, and I know them outside the game, and I know that what they're doing is just in character role playing, I think I can let it slide. But I have discovered, both in real life and online, more often online, that when a character is role playing prejudice against one species for another, or misogyny, for example, is another example, they're doing it because they're projecting their own inner world belief into a fantasy or science fiction game where they can get away with it. Because in the real world, if they express racism or misogyny, there are repercussions for that. And they are bright enough to know there are repercussions for that. So they are only likely to talk about those things when they know they are in a like-minded crowd. I've encountered this numerous times because I'm the palest person in the world. I'm the whitest white boy that ever walked out of White Town. And I have, just for the fact that I am a white dude, has led some people to think that I am willing to accept off-colored racist humor. I'm not, but they've let that slip. They've shown me what's behind their mask because they think I'll accept it. And I found it too often in the role-playing games, again in real life and in online, that people use that in-game justification to show their own inner ugliness. They can't say in real life plaid people are inferior to white people. They do that, they will be censored. People will ostracize them. They will lose friends. They will lose social contacts. They will not be invited back to many things if that comes out. But if they're playing an elf that hates orcs just because they're orcs, or they're a dwarf that hates goblins just because they're goblins, or a human that despises elves because there was a war 20 years ago, they can say, well, I'm just playing my character. That's perfectly and utterly natural. It makes absolute sense. And I've played a character that had a thing against orc raiders. But they had a thing against orc raiders not just because they were orcs, but because orcs had raided and destroyed their village, and they were one of the few survivors as a child. So their justification was against those orc raiders. Now, I didn't get to play the campaign to the point where my goal was eventually to have them understand that while seeking revenge against that particular clan of orcs made absolute sense, that you can't apply it to all orcs, because not all orcs not all orcs are those raiders. Not all orcs are going to be the same thing, and it also means that you have to have a GM that's going to have their orcs not be a homogenous race, that there have to be different kinds of orcs. Um, that maybe not all of them are analogs for Mongols or Huns. And even I realize the Mongol and Huns are not all horrible, but they did do a lot of raiding, just like the Vikings did a lot of raiding. But not all Vikings raided, so I don't think all orcs raid either. But the campaign didn't go far enough for me to really play that out. So there makes some aspects of the game that make sense, and particularly if you're playing really broad things like Lord of the Rings. Those things are painted with rollers. Do you know what I mean? There's not a lot of subtlety there, and let's be honest, Tolkien was a racist. Just like Lovecraft was a racist, and H.G. Wells was a racist, and an anti-Semite, and a misogynist. Wells was not a happy or healthy person. So all those things are real, and that kind of strife makes a world more believable. But I don't want a GM for a group like that. There's too much of it out here. And one of the reasons I like role-playing games is I can create a world that's different, and I hopefully think better. When I was active in the Society for Creative Anachronism, the SCA, one of the sayings I heard is that it was the Middle Ages as it should have been, where there was no misogyny and no racism. It wasn't real. We had a black Viking in Maine, and women could be anything they wanted to be. And it wasn't the Middle Ages. It was us playing at the Middle Ages. And the Middle Ages as they could have been if they were more enlightened. And I kind of want that in my games. It's why I like no evil characters in games that have alignments like D&D and Pathfinder. Because I want to play the good guys. And as a GM, I dabble in playing the bad guys all the time, and I don't want to have the characters be the bad guys too. I need a little light. And just like everybody else, I do this for fun. I'm not there to serve anybody else. No GM is. Just as the players are not there to serve their GM. We're all players in the same game. We're all on that playing field in one way or another. And I don't want to have every side around me be bad guys, or racists, or speciesists, or whatever you want to call it. And if people say, well, that makes you a bad role player, I mean, you're asking people not to be realistic, or well, you're just being a social justice warrior. So, no, I'd like to believe a world like that can exist. And maybe only in a fantasy game. But I still want it. And I think I should be allowed to have it. So, Are you comfortable with GMs expressing that kind of racial or special strife around you? Does it make you uncomfortable? Are you comfortable with your fellow players who express that? Or does it make you uncomfortable? Do you engage in that or do you not engage in it? Have you met gamers, either in real life or online, that are using those kind of in-game prejudices as a justification for expressing their own personal prejudices that they are not allowed socially to express in the real world? Because I know I have. And it's creepy, and I didn't like it, and I don't want it. So I guess we could start a conversation here, and I've rambled on long enough. And I hope that this isn't an exceedingly controversial topic. I'd like us to be able to talk about it like adults. That would be kind of keen, wouldn't it? It'd be almost like a better world.